I'm Madelaine Morrison, and I am in the final stages of my PhD in Canadian history here at Carleton. And my dissertation topic studies musical life in Ontario between about 1880 and 1920. And even though I'm a history student, I've always been very interested in music. I play piano on an amateur basis. And I remember in my undergrad working at a museum and one day finding a collection of songs from the turn of the 20th century and being absolutely confused but also fascinated by the different themes that were in these songs and how different they were from the type of music we enjoy today. Well, what a historian does when they look at a topic like music is we're partly interested in what the music was like to understand an art form, but we're also very interested in how you can use music to discover what society was like 100 years ago. So my research does is it looks at music in the home and then music education and sheet music publishing and then what happens when the Great War comes along. And I'm looking at the music itself and how it was performed and all of these debates that went on in the press. And I try to look at it and say, okay, why was music important? Why did people think it was worth pursuing? And what sorts of people were supposed to perform what sorts of music. And I'm using that to talk about gender and class and ethnicity and notions of community and even nation, ideas of how Canada is going to improve culturally at the turn of the 20th century, and how music sort of forms an anchor, that just goes throughout all of these interesting topics. This is sort of a compendium called Heart Songs. And what publishers would do is they would make folios or books of tunes that had been around a while and they knew were not really going to sell massive copies, but if they bound them together as a book and called them old favorites, then that was some way of kind of reaping additional sales. And I had seen, this is an American book, but it is published around 1914 and gets advertised a lot in the Canadian press. This was owned by a woman named Roberta Wilson, and it says January 1914. And I received this from, I think, her grandson, who had collected all of her music. And I love looking at these sort of personal inscriptions in these books. And you can see that she's listed what her favorite tunes were to play. And if you actually look through and find some of the pieces, you can actually see they're marked up as well. So you get a sense of who the singer or pianist was and what little bits they found more interesting and also what bits they found more difficult based on what they write.